Hello, Professor and classmates. Today, Lucas, and Ralph will be presenting our research project for the Sensors of IoT class, CNT 3122. The case study that we'll be presenting is predicting potential Alzheimer's medical condition in elderly using IoT sensors. We're group number 4. Okay, as you can see here, it was a case study made by Singapore Management University, the institutional knowledge at Singapore Management University. The objectives of our presentation is to discuss probable relationship between elderly behavioral patterns and potential cases of Alzheimer's, sensors used to collect data for research of Alzheimer's, organization of data to derive a solution, and then findings and conclusions from the results. So to kick things off, I'm going to introduce a little bit about what the Singapore institution had been working in. The Singapore government has been working on active aging projects and encouraging the schools, research labs to build solutions for active aging. Shine Seniors project, led by the Singapore Management University, led an effort to make community care services effective through innovations in care delivery using information and communication technology. This project's main objective is through the use of sensor data and analytics is to predict potential Alzheimer's medical condition in the elderly. Also, early diagnosis of Alzheimer's symptoms in elderly using this technology may provide better action plans by the healthcare service providers. Alzheimer's can also be treated. Treatment is the best at the earliest stages of its onset, where it has not affected as many parts of the brain. Therefore, there is a need for technological-based solutions which are simple, effective, and scalable in order to predict potential cases of Alzheimer's. So, some signs of Alzheimer's. A typical Alzheimer's patient, if you notice, they carry out kind of the same activities. They make the same gestures. They say the same thing over and over. They ask the same questions repeatedly, and they also often see changing in their sleep patterns. Some 3 important warning signs of Alzheimer's in the elderly is excessive activity levels within the residence, unusual sleep patterns, high levels of repetitive behavior. So a little bit before we move on, my grandmother, she has Alzheimer's, and in the early stages, these patterns were all occurring, every so often, and my mother decided to go get her tested to see if she did have these, because she looked up what the symptoms were, and unfortunately she was diagnosed with it, but now she's living really comfortably in a care facility for Alzheimer's. I'll elaborate more on that in a bit. So IoT for Alzheimer's detection. So with IoT, we can enable smart homes. It kind of went. IoT-enabled smart homes are not only aiming to provide an environment for assisted living, but are also enabling regular monitoring of elderly without being intrusive. GPS tracking devices and video surveillance were 2 technologies included in the study. However, these techniques are not comfortable for patients, as they felt stigmatized and felt they were often being watched. IoT sensor-based solutions are better accepted, as they can track the locations and movement of people without stimulating their awareness. So my grandmother, where she is living now, amongst other people with diagnosed with Alzheimer's, she has a camera in her room, and there's cameras throughout the whole facility. And before I, read up on this article and this case study, I found it interesting how she would always complain how she was being watched and she didn't like there being cameras and she felt like she couldn't, just live her own life and do what she wanted. And so when I read this part of the case study, it really resonated with me because, my grandmother, expressed the same concerns and feelings, and it's going to be really, really great that, how we can implement IoT to, make them feel better and, not make them feel watched like they say they are. So IoT for Alzheimer detection. So here are a few of the IoT sensors used in the project to monitor the whereabouts of the elderly in their homes. Infrared and thermal detectors were used, radio frequency identifications or RFID wristbands that the Alzheimer patients would wear, and motion detectors. So with these, they can go on living their day-to-day lives and not feel like there's a constant eye watching them and just seeing everything they do and what they don't do. And so yeah, these sensors are there, helping us watch them and make sure they're not hurting themselves or others without them knowing that we're actually observing. So I'm going to pass it on to my partner, Ralph, so he can present the collected data and the results.
All right. Thank you, Lucas, for sharing that information about your grandmother. I know that hit very close to home as we're doing this research project together. And we came across this research, and I thought it was very interesting how at least one of us knew somebody who was going through this, but I never knew that it was so close to you, your grandmother. And I thank you for sharing that with me and the class.
Of course, thank you.
As we continue, I'm going to discuss the collected data and results of this project. Going on to the next slide. The project studied 20 elderly living alone in flats or their homes, equipped with room sensors and main door sensors. Collected data for 6 months from IoT sensors. The data is collected for every 10 seconds from each sensor fixed in 20 elderly homes living alone. Each recorded data was represented by the date and time and different areas of location in the home, such as the living room, bedroom, bed, bathroom, kitchen, toilet, and main door contact. On the table to your right, we have the sensor data description, which shows the data description of IoT sensors from 20 homes. So in the description, you have, the attribute names, you have the SIDs, which is the ID, identifies the elderly, the particular elderly themselves, the date and time, the current sensor detection, the sensor detection of any contact elderly made with the door, such as i.e. open the door to go out or come home. You have the detection sensor of elderly current location in the living room, the sensor detection of elderly current location in the bedroom, the sensor detection of elderly current location in the bathroom, and the sensor detection of elderly current location in the kitchen. And for those types, the data types would be for detection of in that particular room, they were nominal. It'll tell you whether they were in the room or not in the room. Now, table 2 shows the details of the 3 variables used in the Alzheimer's prediction. Those 3 variables were excessive active levels, which was the first one, abnormal sleeping patterns, the second one, and the third one, repetitive behavior. And it was categorized by the threshold factors. Excessive activity levels would be 20 activities and more, and in 1 hour. Abnormal sleeping patterns would be 30 activities out of the bedroom in the night, and repetitive behavior was 30 repetitions with between locations A, location B, and back to location A within 5 minutes. Now, in the variable data analysis, they observed that the second variable, abnormal sleeping patterns, is biased due to visitors, sensor reading inaccuracy, and missing data that causes frequent and inflated duration calculations. Therefore, they relied only on variable 1 and variable 3 for the Alzheimer's symptoms analysis. On this figure, you have the sample heat map showing the number of hours that have more than 20 activities being triggered per day. And this heat map is used for variable number 1, excessive activity levels. During the preliminary data analysis, the students identified some of the unique trends of the elderly and gave attention to a few of the subjects. The elderly that were highlighted were S011, S018, S023, S025, and S028. So here's a closer look of the heat map. So on the right-hand column, you have the ID numbers of each individual elderly who participated in this research. And on the top column, you had the months. Table 3 identifies, or Table 3 defines what the colors on the heat map meant. So you have the certain variables that the heat map would track. One of the variables was number of hours with high triggered activities daily. The second variable was hours spent out of the bedroom location. And the third variable was number of repetition daily. Now, each of these variables had a different color. The colors meant the number of hours, so they varied. Light red for the first variable would be 4 to 9 hours. Red would be 10 to 14 hours. And dark would be 15 to 24 hours. And continuing on, so light red for hours spent out of the bedroom location would be 4 to 9 hours, 9 to 13 hours. And for dark red would be greater than 13 hours. And the numbers of repetition daily, light red 30 to 60 hours, or sorry, not hours, but 30 to 60 times per day. 61 to 90 times per day would be red, and 96 to 161 times would be the dark red. And looking at the next column, based on how red each candidate or each elderly person for that particular day was, or for that month, they were able to determine levels of severity of Alzheimer in that particular elderly. So if you look at the severity rating compared to threshold for all the variables, 3 variables, so an elderly would be considered abnormal if they were greater than 70% light red, or greater than 25% red, or greater than 10% dark red. Continuing on, potential of having Alzheimer, if they were greater than 30% light red, greater than 10% red, or greater than 5% dark red. And then normal, they didn't have Alzheimer's, they were just normal. They would have to be greater than 90% light red, or less than 4% red. From analyzing both tables 5, which is on the left, and tables 6, they were able to identify a few residents at risk of Alzheimer's symptoms, such as candidate or elderly S028 has a relatively high risk of experiencing Alzheimer's, as the analysis shows him displaying highly abnormal actions related to symptoms. In his case, a priority mobile doctor visit would be necessary. S011, S018, S025, and S027 has a moderate risk of experiencing Alzheimer's. Hence, caretakers could schedule mobile doctor visits to examine them. And S023 and S029 has a moderate low risk as shown, as they shown potential issues of concern in both variables. Hence, caretakers can schedule social workers to visit. Continuing on, we're going to discuss we're going to have discussions and findings of this research project. There were limitations in findings due to sensor quality, such as missing data or no known values. More efficient sensors would help to produce more accurate results. Data could be combined with medical history and medications taken for better predictions. Oh, sorry, let me repeat that. Data should be combined with medical history and medications taken for better predictions. Apart from identifying symptoms for Alzheimer's disease, this model can also be used for Parkinson's disease, which causes a deterioration of motor function. In conclusion, overall, the model serves as only a potential early diagnosis to Alzheimer's. A flag in behavior does not necessarily mean that the elderly has definite Alzheimer's, and that further medical evaluation should be performed by doctors to confirm the risk. The project shows the potential benefits of IoT sensors in studying the behavior of elderly citizens, which can be scalable and provide recommendations to healthcare providers. That concludes our presentation of this research project. Thank you for listening. Lucas and I had a good time in presenting this information to the class, and we hope that you gained some useful knowledge from this presentation.
Yes, and when finishing this presentation and gathering all this information and putting it together to present with you guys, I just found it really remarkable how we could use IoT to just help improve, everyone's lives, day-to-day lives. And thinking back to when my grandmother was first diagnosed, who knows, maybe if we would have caught it way earlier, we could have helped treat it before she got to the phase that she's in, because with Alzheimer's there's different phases, and as of now I think my grandmother's in like phase 3, but we could have maybe helped slow it down, because there's no cure, but slow it down, and maybe things could have been different. But so yeah, so I hope we can just continue to learn more from this and do more studies to help slow down Alzheimer's, because it's really it's a terrible disease. But yeah, thank you.